The sound came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It started as a whisper at the edge of consciousness, barely audible over the hum of air conditioning units and the distant traffic of New York City. Then it grew, swelling like a tide until it filled every corner of the earth, penetrating concrete and steel, flesh and bone, straight into the very souls of humanity. Maria Santos was the first to hear it clearly. She'd been working late at the Arecibo Observatory's backup facility in Puerto Rico, monitoring deep space signals when her equipment began picking up something that shouldn't exist. The computers screamed warnings about electromagnetic interference, but Maria knew better. This wasn't interference. This was intentional. The sound was unlike anything in their databases. It wasn't the structured mathematical patterns that SETI had been searching for. It wasn't the random noise of cosmic background radiation. This was something else entirely, a cry that seemed to speak directly to the human heart, transcending language and culture. Within hours, reports flooded in from around the world. Radio telescopes in Australia, Chile, and China all detected the same signal. But it wasn't just the scientists who heard it. Somehow, impossibly, every human being on Earth could hear the cry in their minds, as clear as if someone was speaking directly into their ear. The cry told a story without words. It spoke of a world dying, of a civilization that had reached out across the vast emptiness of space in their final moments. It spoke of children who would never grow up, of parents who couldn't protect their young, of a species facing extinction at the hands of something unspeakably evil. Dr. James Mitchell, director of the Global Defense Initiative, was in the middle of a budget meeting when the cry first reached him. He'd been a Navy SEAL before becoming a scientist, and he'd heard plenty of distress calls in his military career. But this was different. This cry didn't just ask for help, it demanded it. It reached into something primal in the human psyche and pulled. "Sir, we need to evacuate the building," his assistant said, bursting into the conference room. "There's something happening worldwide. Every communication system on the planet is picking up the same signal." Mitchell stood, his military training kicking in. "What kind of signal?" "We don't know, sir. It's not coming from any known source." "But sir." The assistant's voice cracked. "Everyone can hear it. In their heads. It's asking for help." The cry continued for 72 hours. It told the story of the Kalari, a species from a world called Zirion Prime, located in a distant galaxy. The Kalari were peaceful, advanced beings who had spent millennia developing their civilization. They were artists, scientists, philosophers, a people who had turned their backs on war and violence generations ago. But now they faced the Devourers. The images that came with the cry were burned into humanity's collective consciousness. Massive, insectoid creatures the size of skyscrapers, with mandibles that could slice through steel and acid that dissolved flesh in seconds. They moved in swarms, consuming everything in their path: buildings, vehicles, people. They left nothing behind but barren, lifeless rock. The Kalari had tried to fight, but their weapons were designed for defense, not the kind of total warfare the Devourers represented. They had managed to hold them off for months, buying time to send out their desperate plea across the cosmos. But now their shields were failing, their cities burning, their people dying. The cry painted vivid pictures of Kalari children huddled in underground shelters, their large, innocent eyes filled with terror. It showed parents making the ultimate sacrifice, staying behind to buy their families a few more precious minutes of life. It showed a civilization's final moments, transmitted across impossible distances to reach anyone who might listen. But most importantly, the cry contained coordinates. The exact location of Zirion Prime, and a plea for warriors, the strongest, most skilled fighters any species could offer. The Kalari had studied humanity through their advanced technology, and they knew what humans were capable of. They had seen humanity's history of warfare, the incredible feats of courage and skill that human warriors had accomplished throughout the ages. They were asking for Earth's deadliest warriors to save their world. The response from Earth's governments was swift and decisive. Within 24 hours of the cry's end, the United Nations convened an emergency session. The decision was unanimous: humanity would answer the call. But this wasn't a mission for regular soldiers. The Kalari had been specific in their request. They needed warriors who could face impossible odds and emerge victorious. They needed fighters who could adapt to alien environments and combat extraterrestrial threats. They needed humanity's absolute best. The selection process began immediately. Every Special Forces unit on Earth was contacted. The Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force, British SAS, Russian Spetsnaz, Israeli Sayeret Matkal, and dozens of other elite units were asked to submit their finest candidates. But the requirements went beyond military training. Dr. Sarah Chen, a xenobiologist who had been assigned to the selection committee, explained the challenges they faced. "We're not just sending soldiers to fight humans in familiar terrain," she said during a briefing at the Pentagon. "We're sending them to an alien world to fight creatures that operate on completely different biological principles. Physical prowess alone won't be enough. We need warriors who can think, adapt, and overcome the impossible." The selection criteria were unlike anything ever used before. Candidates had to demonstrate not only exceptional combat skills but also psychological resilience, adaptability, and the ability to work as part of a small team under extreme stress. They had to be willing to leave Earth with no guarantee of return, to fight and possibly die for a species they had never met. From millions of potential candidates, the selection committee narrowed it down to 1,000. From that 1,000, they selected 100. And from those 100, they chose 12. The 12, as they came to be known, represented the absolute pinnacle of human warrior capability. Each one was a master of multiple combat disciplines, a proven leader, and someone who had already faced death and emerged victorious. Leading the team was Colonel Marcus Stone, a former Delta Force operator who had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq. At 38, he was the oldest member of the team, but his experience was unmatched. He had the rare combination of tactical brilliance and the ability to inspire absolute loyalty in his soldiers. His second-in-command was Major Elena Vasquez, a Navy SEAL who had broken every record in BUD/S training. She was an expert in underwater demolition, close-quarters combat, and battlefield medicine. More importantly, she had the psychological profile of someone who could make the hard decisions when lives hung in the balance. The team's sniper was Sergeant David Kim, a Marine Scout sniper who could hit targets at distances that seemed impossible. He had confirmed kills at over 2 miles and could operate independently behind enemy lines for weeks at a time. His patience and precision would be crucial against the alien threat. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez brought explosive expertise to the team. She had trained with every type of ordnance known to humanity and had a talent for improvising weapons from whatever materials were available. If the team needed to blow something up, she was the one to do it. The team's medic was Dr. Michael Thompson, a former Army Special Forces medic who had also completed medical school. He could perform surgery under fire and had saved more lives than anyone else in the selection pool. On an alien world, his skills would be the difference between life and death. Rounding out the team were specialists in reconnaissance, communications, psychological warfare, and combat engineering. Each member was hand-picked not just for their individual skills, but for how they would work together as a unit. The training began immediately. The team was taken to a classified facility in the Nevada desert, where they spent 6 months preparing for their mission. They studied everything humanity knew about the Kalari and the Devourers, practiced with prototype weapons designed specifically for the alien threat, and underwent psychological conditioning to prepare them for the horrors they would face. But the most important part of their training was learning to work together. These were all alpha personalities, used to being the best in their respective fields. Turning them into a cohesive unit required breaking down their individual egos and rebuilding them as part of something greater. The breakthrough came during a training exercise designed to simulate the urban warfare they would face on Zirion Prime. The team was tasked with defending a mock city against waves of robotic enemies designed to mimic the Devourers' attack patterns. For the first 3 attempts, they failed spectacularly. Each warrior tried to be the hero, leading to confusion and ultimately defeat. It was Colonel Stone who finally brought them together. "Listen up," he said after their 3rd failure. "Back on Earth, each of you was the best. You were the one everyone else looked up to, the one who saved the day. But here, you're not individuals anymore. You're part of something bigger. The Kalari aren't asking for 12 heroes. They're asking for one perfect weapon made up of 12 parts. The next attempt was flawless. The team moved like a single organism, each member anticipating the other's actions. They didn't just defeat the robotic enemies, they completely annihilated them. From that moment on, they were truly the 12. The technology that would transport them to Zirion Prime was based on principles the Kalari had transmitted along with their cry for help. Human scientists had worked around the clock to reverse engineer the alien technology, creating a transport system that could send the 12 across the galaxy in a matter of hours. The departure took place at a facility in the Mojave Desert, away from prying eyes and potential interference. The transport chamber was a marvel of human engineering combined with alien science, a crystalline structure that hummed with barely contained energy. As the 12 prepared for departure, they were addressed by the President of the United States, speaking on behalf of all humanity. "You carry with you the hopes and prayers of every person on Earth," she said. "You go not just as American soldiers, but as representatives of our entire species. The Kalari have shown us that we are not alone in the universe, and that with knowledge comes responsibility. Save their world, and you save something precious for all of us." The transport activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. The 12 felt their bodies disintegrate and reconstruct, experienced the impossible sensation of traveling faster than light, and then found themselves standing on alien soil under a blood-red sky. Zirion Prime was a world in its death throes. The sky was filled with smoke and ash, the air thick with the stench of burning cities. In the distance, they could see the massive forms of the Devourers moving across the landscape like living mountains, consuming everything in their path. The Kalari who met them were tall, graceful beings with translucent skin and large, expressive eyes. They moved with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and sad, as if they were already mourning their own extinction. Their leader, who identified herself as Coordinator Zara, spoke in perfect English, another gift of their advanced technology. "We thank you for answering our call," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. "We know this is not your world, not your people. But you have come anyway, and for that, we are eternally grateful." Colonel Stone stepped forward, his team arranged behind him in perfect formation. "We're here to fight," he said simply. "Tell us what you need us to do." Zara led them to an underground command center, one of the few places on the planet that was still safe from the Devourers. The facility was a testament to Kalari engineering, walls of living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent light, technology that seemed to be grown rather than built, and holographic displays that showed the battle raging above. The situation was even worse than the cry had indicated. The Devourers weren't just consuming the planet, they were transforming it. Everywhere they passed, the very substance of the world was being converted into something else, something that could support their alien biology. "We estimate we have perhaps 72 hours before the transformation becomes irreversible," Zara explained, gesturing to a holographic map that showed the spread of the alien contamination. "After that, even if we could somehow defeat them, our world would be uninhabitable." The 12 studied the tactical situation with professional interest. The Devourers operated in a hive mind structure, with smaller units coordinated by larger command creatures. They had identified what appeared to be a central command node, a creature the size of a small city that directed the entire swarm. "Take out the command node, and the rest should become disorganized," Major Vasquez observed. "But getting to it through all those drones—" "It's suicide," Sergeant Kim said bluntly. "Even if we could fight our way through, we'd never have enough firepower to take down something that size." Dr. Thompson was examining the biological data the Kalari had gathered. "Actually, we might," he said thoughtfully. "Look at this. The command node isn't just directing the swarm, it's directly connected to every single Devourer through some kind of biological network. If we could introduce a pathogen into that network—" "A bioweapon," Colonel Stone said. "Something that could spread through their entire population." Zara looked uncomfortable. "The Kalari have never developed biological weapons. We find the concept disturbing." "Well, humans don't have that problem," Stone replied grimly. "Dr. Thompson, how long would you need to develop something? With the Kalari's biotechnology? Maybe 24 hours. But I'd need samples of Devourer tissue, and that means getting close enough to collect them." The plan that emerged was typically human in its audacity. While Dr. Thompson worked on developing the bioweapon, the rest of the 12 would conduct a series of hit-and-run attacks designed to both gather the necessary samples and keep the Devourers distracted from the command center. The first mission was a reconnaissance in force against a Devourer processing facility. The team moved through the ruins of a Kalari city, using the rubble for cover as they approached their target. The facility was a nightmare of organic machinery, with captured Kalari being fed into some kind of biomechanical conversion system. "Jesus," whispered Rodriguez as they watched through their scopes. "They're not just killing them. They're turning them into something else." The converted Kalari were horrible to behold, their graceful forms twisted into something insectoid, their minds clearly gone. They worked alongside the Devourers with mechanical efficiency, no longer recognizably the same species. "We need to move fast," Stone said into his calm. "Every minute we delay, more of them get processed." The attack was swift and brutal. The 12 hit the facility from multiple directions, using their superior mobility and firepower to cause maximum damage. They freed the surviving Kalari, collected the tissue samples Dr. Thompson needed, and extracted before the Devourers could mount an effective response. But the cost was high. 3 of the rescued Kalari died from their injuries during the evacuation, and Sergeant Williams was badly wounded by Devourer acid. Dr. Thompson managed to save his life, but the man would never fight again. The second mission was even more dangerous. Intelligence indicated that the Devourers were preparing for a final assault on the last major Kalari city. The 12 had to sabotage the assault force without being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. This time, they used stealth and precision rather than brute force. Sergeant Kim proved his worth by picking off Devourer scouts from impossible distances, while the rest of the team planted explosive charges on key targets. The mission succeeded, but barely. They were discovered just as they finished setting the charges, and had to fight their way out through waves of pursuing enemies. Private Chen was killed during the extraction, torn apart by a Devourer drone that got too close. The team mourned him as they regrouped, but there was no time for a proper funeral. The bioweapon was ready. Dr. Thompson had created something elegant and terrifying. The pathogen was based on a modified version of the Kalari's own biological technology, designed to interfere with the neural network that connected the Devourers to their command node. It would spread through physical contact, meaning they only needed to infect a single Devourer to potentially destroy the entire swarm. But delivering the weapon was the problem. The command node was located in the center of the largest Devourer concentration, protected by thousands of drones. A direct assault would be suicide. "We need a distraction," Stone said as they planned their final mission. "Something big enough to draw most of the drones away from the command node." Major Vasquez smiled grimly. "I've got an idea. The Kalari have been trying to evacuate their last remaining population centers. What if we made it look like we were mounting a major rescue operation?" The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. The 12 would split into 2 teams. The larger team would launch a highly visible assault on the Devourer forces surrounding the refugee centers, making enough noise to attract attention. Meanwhile, a smaller team would infiltrate the command node and deliver the bioweapon. Stone chose to lead the infiltration team himself, taking only Dr. Thompson and Sergeant Kim. The rest of the team would handle the distraction, led by Major Vasquez. It was a plan that required perfect timing and no small amount of luck. The distraction worked exactly as planned. Vasquez's team hit the Devourer forces like a hurricane, using everything from conventional explosives to captured alien weapons. The Devourers responded predictably, pulling forces from across the planet to deal with the apparent threat to their feeding grounds. Meanwhile, Stone's team moved through the chaos toward the command node. The massive creature was even more horrifying up close, a living mountain of flesh and chitin, with thousands of smaller organisms crawling across its surface like antibodies in a bloodstream. Getting close enough to deliver the bioweapon required them to infiltrate the creature's internal chambers. They found an access point near what appeared to be a sensory organ, a cavity large enough for a human to enter. The walls were lined with a substance that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, the creature's nervous system made visible. "This is it," Dr. Thompson said, pulling out a device that looked like a cross between a syringe and a grenade. Once I activate this, the pathogen will spread through the entire network within minutes. But we need to get out fast. When the command node dies, this whole area is going to collapse. Stone nodded grimly. Do it. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The bioweapon spread through the creature's nervous system like wildfire, causing massive system failures throughout its body. The command node began to convulse, its death throes shaking the ground for miles around. But the pathogen did more than kill the command node. As it spread through the neural network, it infected every devourer connected to the system. Across the planet, the alien invaders began to collapse, their coordinated assault turning into random, desperate flailing. The 12 fought their way out of the collapsing command node, racing against time as the massive creature's death throes brought down structures around them. They reached the surface just as the creature's final scream echoed across the planet, a sound of such alien agony that it made the Kalari's original cry seem like a whisper. But their victory came at a cost. The bioweapon had been more effective than even Dr. Thompson had hoped, but it had also infected the converted Kalari. Every being that had been forcibly integrated into the Devourer network died along with their captors. The remaining Kalari mourned their transformed kinfolk, but they also celebrated. Their world was saved, their species would survive, and they had learned something valuable about the universe, that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected sources. As the 12 prepared to return to Earth, Coordinator Zara approached Colonel Stone with a final gift. "We have learned much about your species through this experience," she said. "Your capacity for violence is terrifying, but your willingness to use that violence in defense of others is inspiring. We would like to share our knowledge with your people, to help you become the guardians of this galaxy." Stone accepted the gift, a collection of Kalari technology that would advance human civilization by centuries. But he also left something behind. A monument to the members of the 12 who had died in service to a species they had never met, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories required the greatest sacrifices. The transport home was bittersweet. The 12 had succeeded in their mission, but they had lost 3 of their own in the process. Private Chan, Sergeant Williams, and Corporal Davis would never see Earth again, their sacrifice ensuring that both humanity and the Kalari would have a future. When they arrived back on Earth, the 12 were met by representatives from every nation on the planet. They had become more than soldiers, they had become symbols of what humanity could achieve when it reached beyond its own narrow concerns. The debriefing took weeks. Every detail of the mission was analyzed, every decision scrutinized. The technology the Kalari had shared was disseminated to research institutions around the world, sparking a new renaissance in human scientific achievement. But the most important change was in humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The cry that had started it all had shown that Earth was not alone, that there were other species out there struggling with their own challenges. And sometimes, those species needed help. The Global Defense Initiative was expanded and renamed the Galactic Defense Initiative, with a mandate to monitor deep space for other cries for help. The 12 became the template for a new kind of warrior, one trained not just to fight human enemies, but to face the unknown threats that might emerge from the vast cosmos. The lessons learned on Zirian Prime were incorporated into military doctrine around the world. The importance of adaptability, the value of diverse skills, and the necessity of working together toward a common goal became the foundation of humanity's approach to interstellar conflict. But perhaps the most important lesson was about the nature of heroism itself. The 12 had not sought glory or recognition. They had simply answered a call for help, willing to sacrifice everything for beings they had never met. Their example inspired a new generation of warriors, men and women who understood that sometimes the greatest battles were fought not for personal gain, but for the preservation of life itself. Years later, when other cries for help came from distant worlds, humanity was ready. The template established by the 12 had created a new kind of soldier, one who could fight not just for country or ideology, but for the fundamental right of all species to exist and thrive. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of threats that could destroy entire civilizations. But now it had guardians, warriors who had learned that sometimes the greatest strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. The cry that had compelled humanity to send its deadliest warriors had done more than save one world. It had awakened something in the human spirit, a recognition that with great power came great responsibility. And in the vast darkness of space, that recognition had made all the difference. The 12 had shown that humanity's greatest weapon was not its capacity for violence, but its capacity for sacrifice. And in a universe full of dangers, that was exactly the kind of weapon the galaxy needed. As Colonel Stone looked up at the stars from his home on Earth, he knew that somewhere out there, other species were facing their own dark hours. And when their cries for help came, as they inevitably would, humanity would be ready to answer. Because that was what the cry had taught them, that in the vast loneliness of space, no one should have to face extinction alone. The monument to the 12 stood in the center of the new Galactic Defense Initiative headquarters, a reminder of the price of heroism and the value of sacrifice. But it also stood as a promise that as long as humanity existed, no cry for help would go unanswered, no species would face extinction alone, and the galaxy would always have guardians willing to stand between civilization and the darkness that threatened to consume it. The cry that had started it all had ended, but its echo would reverberate through the cosmos forever. And in that echo, other species would find hope, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, there were warriors ready to answer their call. 5 years had passed since the Zirian Prime mission, and the world had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The Kalari technology had revolutionized human civilization, leading to breakthroughs in medicine, energy production, and space travel. Cities now gleamed with buildings that grew rather than being constructed, their living walls filtering air and generating power from sunlight. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were now easily treatable with bioadaptive healing chambers based on Kalari medical principles. But the most significant change was in humanity's mindset. The knowledge that Earth was not alone, that there were other species out there struggling for survival, had fundamentally altered how humans saw themselves and their place in the universe. The old divisions between nations seemed petty in the face of galactic responsibility. The United Nations had been restructured into the Terran Alliance, with representatives from every nation working together to prepare for humanity's role as protectors of the galaxy. Colonel Stone, now promoted to general, stood in the command center of the Galactic Defense Initiative headquarters, watching the latest batch of recruits undergo their final training exercises. The new facility was a marvel of human Kalari hybrid architecture, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed information directly to the human nervous system. It was both beautiful and functional, a perfect representation of what cooperation between species could achieve. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," reported Captain Lisa Park, the GDI's communications specialist. She was young, barely 25, but she had been selected for her unique ability to interpret alien communication patterns. "It's coming from the Andromeda Galaxy." Stone felt his pulse quicken. This would be the 4th cry for help they had received since Zirian Prime. The previous 3 had been successfully resolved by teams trained in the methods pioneered by the 12. But Andromeda was much farther away, and the logistical challenges would be enormous. "Put it through," he ordered. The sound that filled the command center was different from the Kalari cry, but the emotional impact was identical. This time, the plea came from a species called the Thalassians, aquatic beings whose ocean world was being poisoned by mechanical probes that seemed to be terraforming their planet for some unknown purpose. The images that accompanied the cry showed vast underwater cities dissolving in clouds of toxic chemicals, while desperate Thalassian families fled toward the deepest trenches where the contamination hadn't yet reached. "Analysis shows the probes are of unknown origin," Captain Park reported. "They're not organic like the Devourers, but they're equally destructive. The Thalassians estimate they have perhaps 2 weeks before their entire biosphere collapses." Stone studied the tactical display, his mind already working through the challenges. An underwater mission would require specialized equipment and training. The team would need to be able to operate in the crushing depths of an alien ocean while fighting against mechanical enemies designed for aquatic warfare. "Assemble Team Alpha," he ordered. "And get me a direct line to the Kalari Council. We're going to need their help with this one." The relationship between humanity and the Kalari had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Kalari had become humanity's mentors and allies, sharing not just their technology but their wisdom about the dangers that lurked in the galaxy. In return, humanity had become the Kalari's protectors, the warriors they could never be themselves. Coordinator Zara, now serving as the Kalari ambassador to Earth, appeared on the command center's main screen within minutes. Her translucent features showed the strain of the past few years. The Kalari had been working tirelessly to rebuild their world while also helping humanity prepare for its new role as galactic guardians. "We have received the Thalassian cry as well," she said without preamble. "Our scientists believe the mechanical probes are part of a larger pattern. We have detected similar attacks on 3 other worlds in the past decade, all of which fell before we could respond." Stone felt a chill run down his spine. The Devourers had been a single threat, contained to one world. But this suggested something far more sinister, a systematic campaign to destroy entire civilizations. "Do we have any idea who's behind it?" he asked. Zara's expression grew grave. "We believe they call themselves the Architects. They are an ancient machine intelligence that seeks to remake the galaxy according to their own design. They view organic life as a contamination to be cleansed." The implications were staggering. If the Architects were systematically destroying organic civilizations, then every species in the galaxy was at risk. The Thalassians were just the latest target in a war that had been raging for millennia. "We need to save the Thalassians," Stone said. "But we also need to find out more about these Architects. If they're as powerful as you suggest, we need to understand what we're really up against." The mission to save the Thalassians would require a new approach. Team Alpha consisted of 12 warriors trained in the methods of the 12, but they would need specialized equipment for underwater combat. The Kalari had provided designs for bioadaptive suits that could allow humans to survive in the crushing depths of the Thalassian oceans, while human engineers had developed new weapons designed specifically for aquatic warfare. Leading Team Alpha was Colonel Sarah Chen, the daughter of the xenobiologist who had helped select the original 12. She had grown up hearing stories of the Zirian Prime mission and had dedicated her life to following in their footsteps. Her team included specialists in underwater demolition, marine biology, and mechanical warfare, exactly the skills they would need to face the Architect probes. But as Team Alpha prepared for their mission, Stone couldn't shake the feeling that they were fighting a losing battle. The Architects had been destroying civilizations for thousands of years. What made humanity think they could succeed where so many others had failed? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Michael Thompson, the medic from the original 12, had been working with Kalari scientists to study the bioweapon that had defeated the Devourers. His research had revealed something remarkable about the pathogen's design. "It's not just a weapon," he explained to the assembled command staff. "It's a communication system. The bioweapon didn't just kill the Devourers, it learned from them. It absorbed their knowledge, their strategies, their weaknesses. And that information is still encoded in the pathogen's genetic structure." The implications were staggering. The bioweapon contained a complete record of the Devourer hive mind, including their memories of other species they had encountered. And buried in those memories were references to the Architects' ancient enemies that the Devourers had feared above all others. The Devourers weren't just mindless consumers, Thompson continued. They were weapons, created by the Architects to clear planets of organic life. But something went wrong. The Devourers evolved beyond their original programming and began consuming everything, including Architect technology. That's why the Architects abandoned them and moved on to mechanical probes. Stone felt a surge of hope. If the Architects had created the Devourers, then they had made mistakes before. And if they had made mistakes, they could be defeated. "What else do the memories tell us?" he asked. "The Architects have a central command facility," Thompson replied. "A massive structure at the center of the galaxy, protected by layers of automated defenses. But according to the Devourer memories, it has a weakness. The Architects' reliance on mechanical systems makes them vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption on a massive scale." The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. While Team Alpha worked to save the Thalassians, a second team would attempt to locate and destroy the Architect command facility. It would be a suicide mission, requiring a team to travel to the galactic core and face defenses that had protected the Architects for millions of years. General Stone knew there was only one choice for who would lead such a mission. The surviving members of the original 12 had been training the next generation of warriors, but for this ultimate challenge, experience would be crucial. "I'll lead the mission myself," he announced, surprising no one who knew him. We'll take a small team, just 6 of us. Any more would be detected by their sensors. Major Vasquez, now a colonel herself, stepped forward. I'm with you, sir. We started this together, we'll finish it together. One by one, the surviving members of the 12 volunteered for the mission. They were older now, their bodies bearing the scars of years of combat, but their determination was undiminished. They had answered the first cry for help, and they would answer the last. The final mission would be the most dangerous any human had ever attempted. The galactic core was a region of space where the laws of physics behaved differently, where black holes and neutron stars created gravitational anomalies that could tear apart a spacecraft in seconds. The Architect Command Facility was protected by weapons that could destroy entire star systems, automated defenses that had never been breached in millions of years of operation. But the 12 had faced impossible odds before. They had learned that victory didn't always come from superior firepower or advanced technology. Sometimes it came from the willingness to sacrifice everything for something greater than yourself. As the 2 teams prepared for their respective missions, Stone reflected on how far humanity had come. 5 years ago, they had been alone in the universe, concerned only with their own petty conflicts. Now they were the protectors of entire civilizations, the guardians of organic life itself. The cry that had started it all had awakened something in the human spirit that could never be put back to sleep. It had shown humanity that they were capable of more than they had ever imagined, that their capacity for violence could be channeled into something noble and necessary. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of threats that could destroy entire species. But it also contained hope, courage, and the unbreakable will to protect what was precious. And as long as those qualities existed, no cry for help would go unanswered, no species would face extinction alone. The final battle was about to begin. And win or lose, humanity would face it as they had faced every challenge since that first cry, together, unafraid, and ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of those who could not protect themselves. The echo of that original cry would guide them into the darkness of the galactic core, where the fate of all organic life would be decided. And in that echo, they would find the strength to face whatever awaited them, knowing that they carried the hopes of countless species into the ultimate battle for the soul of the galaxy.